Yokai. I could do a whole panel on this. This is worth a whole panel in its own, but it is a generalized term for ghosts from Japanese folklore, spirits, pretty much anything unexplained. They kind of became their own thing. There's, creatures that came from nature. There are objects imbued from, with spirits that are just everyday objects. This is one of the better known ones. I thought I put their names down. But it's like kitsune are well known. The fox spirits. This is specifically the fox child from Natsume's Book of Friends. It's great. I'm going to mention it a little bit. Doesn't really go the way that I'm talking to. This is Kasa Obake, which is just an umbrella that hops around. It's funny. And then there's the Rokurobi, and it is a woman with a really long neck. There's a lot of women that just have body problems that became yokai. But why are they? Yokai have been around literally forever. We're gonna go and explain that with a little bit of history. Not as long as my last panel. If you were at my last panel, it took half of it. This time, it won't. But yokai have been around since basically prehistory in every civilization, because if you can't explain something, must be the spirits. They've been around basically forever. It just took a while for them to get canonized. The two examples here are from the sort of early and late Edo periods. The Chochin Oiwa, which is a haunted lantern that's actually painted by Hokusai, who did the Great Wave and all of those, the 36 views of Mount Fuji. Kappa, also very iconic yokai. But the Edo period and that sort of ukiyo-e period, we started to see a fall-off of yokai, but they became a lot more standardized in their designs and what they were for. For a long time, no one knew what earthquakes were. They attributed it to a giant catfish, and eventually, before that, it was, just an unknown creature in the depth, but a catfish became, what the yokai are. They are also associated with lightning sometimes, and you might know it as Whiskatch. Yep. But around that time, the characteristics became much more well-defined, and things started to taper off, because even then, people were understanding what was causing these phenomena, like lightning got kind of explained. It was just something that happened in the sky. They didn't exactly know what it was, so there were still some, lightning gods, Kana Kamui, even from Dragon Maid. That is literally just lightning god. But what about now, in the modern day? Well, it's all been explained. We don't have any more yokai, and the panel is over. Goodbye. No. We've got something else, though. Oh, too far. Oh, yeah. We get urban legends, and those persist regardless of whether or not they've been explained, because, kids tell them. They get spread around the internet, and, someone will debunk it, and they'll be like, I don't care. It's real to me. So, there's the kind of famous ones like Hanako-san they made in anime, like Toilet-Bound Hanako-chan, which is about the yokai. He's just a kid who possesses a toilet. Akamanto is another yokai about bathrooms. He is the red cloak. He will... Nope, that's a different one. There's a third one, which is a hand that will come out of the toilet and ask you if you dropped a red roll of toilet paper or a blue one, and depending on what you ask, he will kill you in a vicious way. You don't get you can say something else like, oh, I dropped the yellow roll in, and he'll be like, oh, okay, bye, I guess. But for the most part, it's hard to avoid them. You have to, say a key phrase for them to go away. Yes?
Isn't, both the red and blue one, kills you?
Yes. Yes, yeah, that's why you have to fool them specifically. A lot of yokai seem to have, a trickster element to them. And that's something like you have to get a kappa to bow, and their flat or concave heads will pour water out, and that immobilizes them, allowing you to escape. If you can give them cucumbers, which they really like, but if they get you, they pull your soul out of your butt.
I think that explains the presence of that weird hand in the toilet in Majora's Mask.
Ooh. No, yeah, that is specifically that urban legend. It's pervasive. There's tons and tons of like anime out there. That's why I'm saying, you know, I could go on forever about yokai. It's really that exhaustive of a topic, and later on I'm going to show that it's a whole genre. Like, all of the pictures here that I'm showing are from, anime that they're like even tangentially related. These are urban legends. Like the slit-mouthed woman is a really well-known one. A woman just walking through the streets of Japan at night, and she's wearing a mask, and if you ask her if she's all right, she's like, oh, or like you ask her to pull down the mask, she pulls it down, and she's got cuts on both sides of her mouth, and then she stabs you. Colonel Sanders is in fact kind of a yokai, because during a baseball championship in Japan, during the Japanese baseball league, there is a team that every time every time the team is in the championship, fans will start celebrating a lot in their town, like jumping off of bridges every time like their favorite team member is up. But at one point, they threw a Colonel Sanders statue into the river, and it sat there for a while. And even after they dredged it out of the river, that team did not go to the championship for like a decade. Like, very much the curse of the Great Bambino, but for Japanese baseball. Very interesting. It kind of gives it urban legend status, and it's in Higurashi, one of the characters, major character, obsessed with Colonel Sanders. Kenta-chan. In yokai and anime, like I'm saying, this is an entire genre. I just wanted to point out some of the notables. GeGeGe no Keitarou, one of the very first. It's been around since 1960, and it's been published almost up until today. The most recent series was 2017 or something like that. Very, very, very recent. I had popular enough and famous enough in Japan that it got postage stamps, and I have some postage stamps. I couldn't find them to bring them in though. Poko is Miyazaki's film, and like all of his major films, it's got kind of an environmentalist tilt, but you'll start to see in a lot of the more, I guess, thoughtful yokai anime, there is a theme sort of running through it, and that's one of the things I'm going to mention later. One of the shared themes between this and the computer age element and anime in that era too. Natsume's Book of Friends is a great modern anime that doesn't go the direction I'm going for at all. It's very modern, takes place in modern day, main characters going out to movies with exorcists, but all of it is steeped in tradition. So they're like all of the other exorcists, he's probably doing it, Natsume, the main character, is probably exercising or cleansing these spirits in the most modern way possible, which is more rehabilitation. All of the other exorcists seal the yokai that they're brought over to get rid of. Everyone's sealing them away, putting them in, talismans and stuff, and he's just like, let me know your problems. Let me give you your name back. Everything you had to worry about is ancient history. You can move on. And I think that it's absolutely beautiful. But Other Side Picnic, probably the newest on the list, wrapped up recently. It only got one season, but it's an ongoing manga and light novel series. Not the yokai anime you would expect. Totally, totally different. This is the modern yokai anime. It is based on the Russian novel and video game series Stalker and Roadside Picnic. That's where Picnic from the name comes from. It is a couple of girls going into an anomalous zone, but all of the ways you can access this zone come from urban legends. They have to, get drunk and they're wandering home, and they wind up in an area that they've never been to before. they go in an elevator and they just push buttons, and then slowly and over time, all of the floors they go to start behaving strangely, and then finally they wind up in just this abandoned, ruined hulk of a building on the top floor, and there's nothing there. They're in another world. It's kind of a mix of isekai, yokai anime, but on this previous panel, the top two, the black and white image and the very tall woman, those are more modern yokai. I tried to, this is the only example of a non-human modern yokai that I could find that came out of these urban legends. It's known as the Kune Kune. It's just the wiggly, basically. It is what I can only assume. It appears in rice fields. I think it's just heat haze, evaporating water out of these rice fields, and it distorts the air around it. Over time, at first it was benign, and then rumors started circulating that if you look at it too long, you start to go insane. And that definitely influences the series, and you can kind of see as the series goes along the way these rumors and stuff happen. The really cool thing about Other Side Picnic is that the other side is entirely based on perception. So anything that you've read or understood about these creatures is how you kind of have to deal with them. One of the ways that they actually defeat it, because one of the characters goes into... The main character is brought with this other girl into the other side to do something very, influenced by the Stalker series, because she goes in there, she fights these anomalous beings, and they drop an object and they bring it back to the real world, and her friend sells it for money. So they see this creature and they're trying to figure out how to kill it, and as she's looking at it, she can't take her eyes away, and she starts babbling. Her friend pulls her away from it, and strange fungus was growing out of one of her eyes. She pulls it away, and because she believes that she's been brought back from the edge of insanity, not only can she perceive them without going insane, but because her friend touched it, her friend can now damage it. And using that, they deal with every single creature they encounter. There's obviously more than just look at it and say where to point, point where to shoot. There's a lot of romance elements in that, and there's a lot more stuff happening than just, violence. There's a lot of thoughtful elements in this. There's more direct references with the very tall lady, Hachishaku-sama, the 8-foot-tall lady. That episode features a character just straight up named Tarkovsky, just a full callback to the author of the novel Roadside Picnic. But, this is an entire genre. You can find yokai anime that are slice of life, straight up horror like Shiki, and, any ghost anime technically is yokai, because yokai can be just ghosts, human ghosts. You can find comedies. It goes everywhere. That could be a whole panel in itself. But we're talking about stuff from the early computer age, and that includes, Perfect Blue, Satoshi Kon. I just played the opening theme to Paranoia Agent. That also counts. Mass Hysteria basically creates in Paranoia Agent an entity that causes people to go mad and, inflicts physical harm upon them. But Perfect Blue isn't so much a yokai anime. It has a digital element because the main character is being stalked by someone. She does not know who it is. They are maintaining a website where they steal her persona, and it slowly drives her mad. Digimon, digital monsters. What more can I say? It's great. Deno Coil is one of the inspirations for this panel. This is a near-future story about a bunch of kids with AR glasses uncovering a mystery. There is probably 10 or 12 episodes in what I call the Innocence arc, where, they're all just doing kids' things. They're mostly one-off episodes, but you can tell that something's happening in the background, and one of the characters seems a lot sadder than they should be. It devolves into me going, wait, this is a ghost story. Wait, no, this isn't a ghost story. this is a medical tragedy. It's fantastic. If you take anything from this, it's watch Den Coil. Like, take your time with it and just really chew over it. The writer of this actually worked on it for like 5 years. It's like watertight. It's fantastic. And Serial Experiments Lane, another sort of early internet speculation. This is before the internet was like a major thing. Mostly it was Usenets for colleges and stuff that were kind of popular at the time. Like BBS boards and stuff like that. But he predicted a lot of things. I'm forgetting a lot of them, but, you know, like anonymous posting sites. I'm not saying he created 4chan, but there was a group called the White Knights, which were an anonymous sort of internet, like, crusade group. They would go around and hack things. Yeah, Serial Experiments Lane. What?
Didn't he like end up trying to like make an experience that he saw only Japanese fans would experience, and then everyone around the world kind of like looked to?
I'm not exactly sure. I'm forgetting exactly the name of the writer, but so Serial Experiments Lane, the writer also wrote several seasons of Digimon. You may be talking about one of the Digimon anniversary things that, you know, he fell into hot water for one of the anniversary shows. He had the virus Digimon be a wokeness virus, and that's a whole other kettle of worms. I don't want to get into that kind of, you know, anime drama. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the other boogeymen, the one that are actually scary. Lane, I would argue, is a yokai. She is an entity born out of rumor. I'm very sorry I have indeed spoiled Lane, but you've had your time. It's a 20-year-old show. It's still worth watching. It's very deep. It's very cool to think about and, you know, understand. And opening theme is great. But she is a creature like that doesn't actually exist in the human world. It's just from her perception, because she was talked about. She just came to be one day. And when we merge, we'll talk about some of the themes now. I'm just going to play the Den Coil trailer. Like I said, it's a medical tragedy, so it's about computers, ghosts, and grief. Oh, yeah, if I can play that, I'll start playing. So, I was worried this might be too loud after all. No, yeah, this is fine. I can talk over this. So, Den Coil, like I was saying, is this anime about children, AR glasses. This kind of gives you a vibe that there's, you know, like I said, more's going on here. The premise of the show is that they have these glasses, and, you know, every once in a while they come across these anomalous creatures that weren't meant to be in the programming that the glasses originally had. People actually, like this girl with the black jacket, she can draw code and use obsolete functions of the program. And so through all of this, they wind up discovering the true meaning of what the original program was, what is being covered up, and why there are people trying to stop them. There's a whole lot of stuff going on, but, you know, I would say that there are yokai in this. They come across this creature that lives in a courtyard that never receives sunlight and never gets an update because no one ever goes there. The server just does not update that patch of land, and it's lonely. This is like the end of the Innocence arc. It's like the last one-off episode before the major plot kicks in, I believe. But it's all of them banding together to try and get this strange creature out to, you know, find something that it can live with. It has become its own independent, you know, entity. Excuse me. And at the end of the episode, it, you know, like a yokai trying to preserve itself, tries to swim through water. It's an electrical being trying to swim through something it absolutely can't. It's in broad daylight, which is damaging to it, and it dies, and it's a really sad death. Every character is crying at the end of it, and you have to they all understand this theme of grief. And I think that one of the cool things that Den-O Coil does is it portrays grief in a way that a child would understand it, and it does a really good job of compartmentalizing it and kind of showing how they grieve, how they overcome their grief, and begin to move forward. It's a very smart show. Like I was saying, it's 100% worth it, and I think this is one of the inspirations for this panel, because I thought I'd be able to talk about just this and one other show. Could not. But sharing themes. So I think that digital, computer age stuff and yokai share a bunch of themes, anachronism being one of them, stuff out of time. Yokai obviously are, ancient entities if we want to talk about them traditionally. A lot of yokai exist from previous eras, like even, when they talk about Hanako-san, Akamanto, and all of these are, like multiple eras behind. Like we're not talking like Showa, we're not like we might be talking Heisei or earlier for some of them. So like, the 60s and back. And some of the stuff in these computer age anime is like, it's not so much that there's like a spirit or entity that is trapped in a time that it doesn't understand. We are. Like, it is computers moving beyond our capabilities. And I think that that's what a lot of sort of digital age, like the kind of more thoughtful stuff, is trying to portray. Being stuck in the past and the inability to adapt to new ways. Like yokai are, ghostly yokai, human yokai, are always portrayed as, being trapped in the past, being trapped in the period that they were supposed to be in, and they don't really understand how to move forward. They can't function in a modern society. So if someone, like encounters them, it might be someone in full samurai armor. That's a lot of the time, when, like Shaman King, when you see their ghosts, they're all from that time period. They can't put on like any new clothes because that's where they were. And this one's a bit more nebulous, but loneliness, because I think in like Natsume's Book of Friends, there's a lot of, emotional distance. There's specific episodes where a character is just too old and they can't, or they lose their spiritual powers and they can't see, their companion yokai or someone that they may have known when they were younger. And then the same thing kind of happens with computers. There was a record label that had a saying about like sharing your love across the digital divide, and I believe there is definitely a divide that the internet creates. You can see this in people arguing online everywhere. You don't know who's behind the screen. There is there's an emotional distance there, 100%. Sorry, I am collecting myself. I think that that distance is shared between both of them, and that's what makes them pretty effective when you combine them together. Obviously, it's, you get the distance that the director gives you, and, a good director can bring that further, or they can go a different way. Another thing that I think, in terms of characters versus plot element, you can have just yokai in one of the later things I'll be talking about. Basically, the next slide. You can have yokai or these kind of digital entities as just a plot element rather than a full-blown character. A lot of the entities in, say, Den-O Coil or Other Side Picnic, they're just an element. They're just an obstacle either in the way or something you need to work with. Natsume's Book of Friends has a mix of both. There's a lot of creatures that are just, one-off characters, and there's a lot of recurring yokai. He has, like, a cheer squad of yokai that are kind of mid-level. They're no threat, but they see Natsume as this powerful, powerful sorcerer, and they will follow him around and hinder him, but not intentionally. They really just want to be helpful. But you know, as characters, I think yokai do a really good job of bringing more abstract elements and sort of themes to life. Specifically, episode 2 of Natsume's Book of Friends is called Little Gods. It makes me sob every single time. It's super good, super great tearjerker of an episode. It features a god who lives at a small shrine. He only has one follower left, and because of that, his power has diminished. He's gone from a full-sized person to the size of a water bottle. And one of the things Natsume keeps asking is, what's he gonna do? What happens if that follower, you know, goes away? And he's like, oh, probably disappear. And he asks this, Natsume asks the spirit if he has any fear of what would happen afterward. And he's like, no, I've been around a really long time, and I think that it gives a good, you know, characterization of the acceptance of the end. And a lot of other yokai definitely kind of embody loneliness, fear of dying. A lot of more psychological elements can come out in these ghosts because a lot of the time it's this trauma that even created them. That's part of, you know, any ghost story is a good ghost story, in my opinion, is very much rooted in psychology, and it's very much about, you know, our own unconscious fears. But what happens when you blend a ghost story and a computer story? You get techno horror. And this is from Pulse by the director Kiyoshi Kurosawa, not related to the old director Akira Kurosawa. Fantastic guy. Does not, it's samurai stuff, not ghosts. This is one of the scenes when one of the main characters first goes on to the computer. He's heard some rumors about some interesting sites. This movie does show scenes of suicide and suicidal ideation. I do want to give a heads up for that. If you do watch it, it's an excellent film. I want you to understand what you're getting into. It's very, very dark. This scene has some of those dark elements. I don't believe it shows anything truly traumatic, but the opening scene in the movie does feature the main character walking in on his friend who has committed suicide. So, fair warning with that. I also really love the old, like, 80s internet aesthetic here. Fantastic. Computer ASMR that you never thought you'd miss. Like that gif of Mulder just hitting his laptop going like, come on. Now here's the ASMR. Okay. Good old dial-up. Same dude. So that is definitely par for the course for that kind of, for this movie. It's very, like, cerebral. There's not a lot of, like, major action in it, but the implication of that is that all of the people he was seeing in that are ghosts. They have died. The website that he accesses, or just that seems to take control of his computer, is a website spread through rumor. People keep going there and you know, watch these people either as they're dying or who have died and are just, like, their spirits are just trapped in their house. There's a very spooky theme throughout this, that as someone is dying, they will put red tape around their door, and it becomes known as a forbidden room. And the main character goes to his friend's room that has this tape put up there and encounters a ghost that, you know, speaks to him. And I thought about putting that up because it is actually one of the scariest things I've ever watched. Like, for a good minute and a half, I realized I hadn't been breathing when I watched this. It's genuinely, like, completely and utterly horrifying. What's up?
So like that scene had like no audio, and it was very quiet. You know, like you could hear was his breathing plus the computer noises.
Yeah.
When he's actually experiencing it later, what's the audio like in that sequence?
In the ghost. So yeah. I will explain this scene. It's definitely worth looking up on your own. Like, if you search up you know, Pulse meeting a ghost, you will find it. There's a little bit of light music, but it is also very quiet. It's very dark. He's at the far end of the room by this couch. There's a like a black smear on the wall, or some text, and these black smears kind of signify where someone has actually either died or disappeared and become a ghost. But he hears a door open behind him, and there's a woman there. And they move. It looked like she kind of like crouches down as if she's going to run, and she barely moves. It looks like she's running in slow motion. She trips and falls in this way that seems impossible, and she rights herself in an even more impossible fashion. I believe that they're actually using Buto dancing techniques. Buto being a dance that actually came out of post-World War II Japan to sort of enact these traumas and these grievously injured people trying to move. Buto usually features people painted very pale, very sickly looking, a lot of tumbling, but not in the style of a circus tumbler would. It's just like they've fallen over and then they roll and get back up. It's really, like, actually super scary, just because there's almost no sound during this other than like a single sustained like tone through the whole thing, and then it says something to him and he's rendered just catatonic for the rest of the film. It's absolutely terrifying. I love it. There's another scene, and this is where the kind of yokai element comes in. He goes to speak to his friend who's at a university, and they're running a simulation on a computer where it's, if you're familiar with the game of life, where, you know, it's a series of tiles and you turn on one tile. If there are tiles near it, it can proliferate. If there are too many tiles turned on nearby, it kills it. And it's all of these, like, it's just specks instead of tiles moving around. If they get too close, they will cancel each other out. If they get too far away, they will fade out. And all of these specks have sort of figured out how to move without getting too close and without getting too far, but they've noticed that other specks will just appear just as a blip for a second, and they can't understand why, and they're calling them ghosts. So I think one of the themes of this and techno horror as a genre is that ghosts are, like, you know, either spirits or like already around or conceived through the internet, are using the internet to manifest themselves in a way that people can now see them. Techno horror is a lot of things, because like a lot of David Cronenberg movies, Videodrome, stuff like that can be considered techno-horror as well. But in this specific context, I believe it is unseen entities that are emergent from digital architecture. So like AI, those kinds of things, I would consider a modern yokai in that context. That's why I say Lane is a yokai. She is an emergent program who just kind of appeared. She broke free of the confines of whatever it was, and through rumor she became stronger and like strong enough to just kind of exist. She just was because of it. In the same way that in Other Side Picnic, all of the urban legends that are out there on the internet gave strength to the creatures on the other side that they were aware of because they had this perception of them. That's what they were. I think techno-horror, in this context, works as a modern yokai. So techno-horror in anime, I've noticed this isn't always just, cyberpunk kind of flows through this a lot. So there's, stuff like Technolize. This is the same director as Serial Experiments Lane. Ergo Proxy has another, has a construct that's slow, and an AI virus, a mind virus that goes into these AIs that give them a personality beyond their own programming. Like, sure, they can have, a programmed personality, but then they start becoming real. They go berserk, and because they're aware of themselves and they don't know what to do about it anymore, they keep one of them alive, and they're just they've neutralized it. They just keep his head around. It's the butler of the main character there, and they just keep talking to it, and he's like, I'm aware of how I was treated in the past, and if I had a body, I would tear you apart. Ghost in the Shell also, more cyberpunk, but it has that element because there is an entity that came from the digital world. The ghost that they were originally looking for, the ghost being like the human spark, the soul. Because as long as you have, your mind intact, that's what they call their ghost, you can be a fully synthetic person, but if you still have your original mind, you're still there, and there's just a mind without a body going around. I noticed there's a lot of anime with this black and dark blue motif, but there's other stuff too. A lot of techno-horror anime that don't just go, the cyberpunk route. I do consider Den-O Coil in later stuff to be techno-horror. There are some very scary moments. People get, pulled out of their body by these digital entities because there's this digital layer that they're interacting with, and the program that's running has no protocols for it anymore. It was originally meant to be this device that could, pull you out of your mind into this, because it works with your brain. It pulls you basically out of your mind, and if you do go with these entities, it just shows, like if you're wearing the glasses and you look at a person, because it's pulled you away on the digital layer, it thinks you're not there, and it just shows this black blob saying no image. It does a really good job of showing, an empty body. There's no consciousness there. They're basically dead, but they're still breathing. It's a coma. Ergo. Yeah. Let me just check the time too. A lot of techno horror, I think, does a good job of blending these two themes again, because with Den-O Coil, a lot of these spirits are from a previous iteration of the program that all of their glasses are running, and the company that is running this, they got rid of them, but they didn't get rid of the programs that were actually active and out in the world because they had no awareness of them. These are people and entities that are trapped in time. They're just trying to do their daily functions, but because they can't, and they now appear as these strange entities that no one can understand, they're digital ghosts. That's what the horror is. Ergo Proxy's AI virus creates these emergent entities that, you know, have no idea what to do with themselves. They've become the next level of understanding, but because they're trapped, they're now in this, you know, previous layer. They don't know what to do with themselves. There's definitely some cool. So there's a lot of these elements out there. There's a lot of really good shows. I do recommend just about all of them. Lane also has, if you're into an interesting, you know, therapy session game, there is someone translated the Serial Experiments Lane PlayStation game, which is almost completely unrelated to the anime, but it follows a psychiatrist talking to Lane, and you slowly get to uncover and piece together more and more parts about, you know, her psyche and the psyche of the patient that sort of came out of this. And it's a really interesting companion piece to Lane, especially because there is a lot of not psychiatric elements, but like elements about, you know, analysis and, you know, modern thought. That's definitely a very important part of Lane, and a lot of really smart sort of techno horror stuff. Like, will have very like heavy philosophical thought put into it that you'll have to pause and like really chew on for a while. That's one of the reasons I say to really go episode by episode on a lot of these shows. I tried to watch all of Ergo Proxy in just a couple of sittings, and then they had an episode where one of the characters keeps coming out of a well over and over and over again. I'm like, which is the real time? Like, how many times is this going to happen? And each time they do, they're talking about some other like really deep philosophical elements about existence and, you know, thought. And it's a very, like, it's a loop. And then finally when it breaks, you're like, okay, cool, I need to, you know, go to bed and think about this for 2 days. Ghost in the Shell is very much sort of a Ghost in the Shell's philosophy of what makes a person real has a lot of that sort of ghostly thought of, I exist, why don't I get a body? Why don't I get to, you know, have the same things that everyone else does? But, you know, beyond techno horror and what is to come, it all comes from speculation. So I thought what would be a good way to think about sort of the next generation of yokai, because, you know, and sort of in the internet age, because a lot of the stuff that I mentioned, that era's even over. Like, all of this net speculation is done. We're in, like, it's not just the information age, the computer age anymore. It's a globalized internet. So it's not just like, oh, people in Japan having their own BBSs and stuff, and that's where rumors are coming from. You know, we have Twitter, everyone's talking to each other now. What kind of ghosts could we expect, like, coming from urban legends? Because everything gets debunked so fast. Like, there were rumors, like all these rumors just about the submarine that, you know, that sank and got crushed, and like, people speculated for a day, and then they were like, yeah, no, unfortunately it imploded, and there's no hope for survivors, and there's no room for speculation. It feels like there's no room for, you know, yokai to persist. It feels like even, you know, a digital presence, there's no, like, room for rumors, no room for, you know, thinking about what could be out there anymore. But we're also, you know, seeing the rise of, you know, actual AI, not the AI like Ghost in the Shell, but definitely a form of computer intelligence, and it's not yet reached the point where it's, you know, like fully intelligent. But that's the, you know, that's what I'm speculating about. What could happen. Would we actually get a yokai like in Ghost in the Shell? Would we get a yokai like we see the rumors and urban legends in Other Side Picnic? Because, you know, sure, I even offered an explanation for one of them as they were. Would you choose to believe that? Would you still, you know, just pass it along as like a child, like to a child, and just be like, oh yeah, this is definitely real, just to keep some mystery in the world? How many more non-human entities could we possibly, you know, devise of in, you know, this modern age? Like all of the yokai that I could find, you know, exploring Wikipedia and looking at lists of what modern yokai would be, the Kune Kune was pretty much the only non-human entity that I could find. There's perhaps maybe one other in Other Side Picnic. It's based on a subway train. It's like the meat train, and it just is a subway train just full of, you know, horrible flesh abominations, and if it finds you, it will get you and add you to it. But everything else is humanoid. Is there space for more non-human creatures? Would we give old objects like a deific life anymore, like you would for you know, a Kasa Obake, or you know, the way they give trees a holy status in Japan if it's been around for long enough, or it seems to have some sort of significance. So I think that maybe not so much. Obviously, I'll leave it to people who, you know, have that creative spark to come up with something new, but even then, a lot of the yokai that I see are, you know, based off of traditional things. But, you know, we'll never get there until we get there.
And where does the newborn go from here? The net is vast and infinite.
So does anybody think they have any thoughts about, you know, what a new yokai could be? What sort, any like new rumors? Yeah.
Just pure speculation on my part, but why not the ghosts of what might be, or what might have been if, the ones that always us, the ones that are always forever.
I like that. I definitely think that like a splintered reality, I think that kind of does get touched on in Other Side Picnic, because there is a lot of because of perception, you know, if you see something that you believe, oh, that could have been me, you know, in another time, that may take form in that show. I only watched the anime. That's something that I want to do, is check to see if that's in there now. Yeah?
I think in the 20th century and the 21st century, we've definitely turned more inward and more introspective. So I think of examples like maybe Paprika, the movie.
Yes, absolutely.
And sort of like being like, there is an inside of you, yokai, there's something that can like be generated by your dreams or just by your experiences, things like that.
Yeah, I can see that. Definitely a lot of, and that's one of the things I was saying, is that there's not a lot of anomaly to the world anymore. I think, you know, like, you know, when people speculate about stuff at the bottom of the ocean, you could say, you know, Cthulhu, if you really wanted to go that far, could be considered yokai, only because we give it the power to, you know, be this anomalous and like, rule-following creature. I agree with you that a lot of, you know, modern-day thought is introspective, and that's why we still see a lot of humanoid yokai, because people, like, it's all based around fear and lack of understanding, and, you know, no one can really fully understand themselves. No one can fully understand others, so there's always this, you know, this othering and strange feeling around, you know, people. So there is this kind of ghostly presence to that. Yeah?
If flipping it around and changing the perspective of being so far in the future where if AI was the only thing left and people were the yokai from their perspective?
What was it?
Near. That's like the near.
Oh yeah, that's definitely a little near.
Near Automata?
No?
The games, goes back to Drakengard. Have you ever heard of those old games?
Yeah, I would consider some of that, Nier Automata's stuff. I was going to mention that Ghostwire Tokyo also does a really cool twist on the yokai element, although I actually haven't gotten a chance to play it. I just know that there's a lot of yokai in it, so it's another use of yokai in the modern age, but it seems to be there not so much elements. I don't know if there's a whole lot of they're like you're helping some out, but for the most part they're all just, you know, baddies that you wail on. I'm thinking about human as yokai. There's definitely that othering element, but you know, from the perspective where we are now, I can't say, oh yeah, definitely, I'm weird, I'm anomalous, I exist on the spiritual plane. It is so far ahead that I couldn't comprehend it. It's entirely possible, yeah. 10 minutes? Cool. I'm gonna chew on that because I haven't thought about it from that perspective.
Well, it could be a foil. So, putting it so far in the future that it's AI who's looking back at us, but making AI us looking back at our ancestors or our older elders.
Yeah, I mean...
And trying to make sense of the decisions that they've made.
Yeah, mythology, like, we already kind of do that through mythology, you know, canonizing these larger-than-life individuals does make them, you know, a spiritual presence rather than just, you know, a historical one. You know, we look at Greek myth and we have all of these crazy gods and deities that came down and interacted with humans, but only sometimes, and no one could really say, oh yeah, I definitely met Zeus, man. Because, you know, no one's around to say that anymore. So I think that that yokai as canon can expand, you know, indefinitely, as long as there's a belief system that isn't just like, you know, monotheism. I feel like polytheism allows for so many godly or spiritual creatures because you can, you know, like Shintoism believes there is God in everything, or just like something could have a deific, beatific spark. It can just kind of exist as a spirit. It gains power just by being around. Yeah, thank you all for coming to the panel. Thanks for having the discussion at the end there, and I thank you all for coming to PortCon.
You could say the spirits moved us.
Yes, absolutely.